সময়ের হাত ধরে পরিবর্তন অবশ্যম্ভাবী, যেমনিভাবে পরিবর্তন ঘটেছে বিনোদন মাধ্যমেও। সিনেমা হল, টেলিভিশনের পাশাপাশি বর্তমানে জনপ্রিয় বিনোদন মাধ্যম ওটিটি। আজ 18 ডিসেম্বর 28তম কলকাতা আন্তর্জাতিক চলচ্চিত্র উৎসবে শিশির মঞ্চে আয়োজিত সত্যজিৎ রায় মেমোরিয়াল লেকচারে ওটিটি মাধ্যম নিয়ে গুরুত্বপূর্ণ আলোচনায় বক্তা ছিলেন 3 বারের জাতীয় পুরস্কার জয়ী বিশিষ্ট চিত্র পরিচালক সুধীর মিশ্র। এই আলোচনার শিরোনাম ছিল আন্ডারস্ট্যান্ডিং সিনেমা ইন দ্য চেঞ্জিং টাইমস অফ ওটিটি। প্রায় 1.25 ঘন্টার এই আলোচনায় বিনোদন মাধ্যম থেকে সিনেমার গল্প নির্বাচন, অভিনেতা থেকে জগৎবিখ্যাত পরিচালকদের কাজ, ওটিটি মাধ্যমের গুরুত্ব, প্রয়োজনীয়তা, ভালো মন্দ এসব নানা বিষয় নিয়ে কি কি কথা বললেন সুধীর মিশ্র, শুনে নেওয়া যাক।
Thank you. In the times of film festival, that there's so many people willing to listen to a lecture is quite. Especially, I must tell you that I'm not a lecture sort. You know, I mean, I'm a little confused, and every time I start a film, I don't know where I'm going, and there's a blank page in front of me, and you know, I think my fraud will get caught out this time. You know. And they'll all realize what a fraud I am, you know. So that's you know, I'm that way, you know. I mean, you know, I'm a filmmaker who doesn't take himself very seriously. So I mean, here I am lecturing. So what I will do is I will offer some insights of my. Beg your pardon? I mean, I'll offer some insights, some provocations, some ideas, some thoughts. You are free to interrupt. What I would have loved is for 500 kids of Xavier's or someplace to sit here and challenge me. And that would have been wonderful, because if they attacked me, it would be something new, you know, and maybe I'd learn something, because I work a lot with young people, you know, and I, you know, they think that I teach them, and a lot of them are very grateful. They don't know that I'm kind of taking up stuff from them, because that energy and that irreverence and that lack of, you know, having done it before causes them to be brave. And all of us, you know, who have standard responses to standard things, you know, need to, you know. So I mean, I've been around a long time, you know, so I've seen changes in this industry, right? So when I came in, it was 82, you know, and it was it was just before video came in, and there was this bunch of filmmakers who thought they would change the world, and that cinema would change the world. And we were in Mumbai, and you know, people like Sudhir Mishra and Kundan Shah and Vinod Chopra and Ketan Mehta and Shekhar Kapoor and people Mahit Bhatt and all were starting out. You know, I was an assistant, and when video came in, suddenly, you know, everybody you know, pronounced the death of cinema. And you know, I mean, the cinema is a theatrical experience, but then cinema, as you know, survived, you know. So now we are in the time of OTT, and when we talk about OTT, in my time, OTT used to mean over the top, and we are living in over the top times, when there are over the top responses to everything. So one of the problems of making films in any especially in this era is that what you say and what is understood are two different things, right? So anybody can say anything about your film, and I thought, for instance, Sanjay Leela Bhansali was the one filmmaker in Mumbai who, whatever you might think of his films, understood Indian culture, Indian music, Indian dance, was some sort of from the tradition of Shantaram in some way. Some may like him, some may not like him, but then it turned out that he was anti-Hindu. So I mean, and then somebody beat him up. So I mean, so that's a problem, right? Because Bhansali is very Indian, and so this is the time when we have a problem in our hands, right? But we are filmmakers, and like Shaji said, to us, we were talking in the morning that we are only concerned about our craft, right? And I don't know how to respond to these times except to go back into my craft and to go back into making films the way I have known it, right? So I often wonder, just because it is called the Satyajit Ray Memorial Lecture doesn't mean we have to talk too much about Ray, but it's interesting to imagine how Ray would have dealt with these times. It's interesting to think what would people say to him. Imagine a young Satyajit Ray walking into an OTT office, If they had been allowed to make Pater Panchali. I hope so. I don't know. He was, pretty persuasive, I think, and a genius. So maybe he would have, but it would have been tough because it's as if filmmakers are setting out to present problems. It is as if we cannot make films that question, that have some dissonance, that have some idea of that life is not ideal, that films that pose questions, films that are not necessarily sensationalist but provoke someone. That is the purpose of filmmaking a bit. In one sense, there are many purposes of filmmaking, right? The film, you take the film stock and you make a film and you can use it in many ways, right? So I'm not knocking popular cinema, right? Because there's so many people who watch it and who get a certain kind of pleasure from it. So, and sometimes people take the popular form and do something with it. So I'm not here to knock anything, right? But if we are talking about a kind of cinema, a kind of independent filmmaking, then we are in slightly tough times. Apparently, the digital framework was supposed to be, or the internet or the web was supposed to set us free. It was this immense library that anybody could go to, but the more there seems to be knowledge available, the less people seem to know, And there is a contrary view to everything, right? So, what is it that we can do at the moment? It's a pretty tough question that confronts us. Cinema to me seems to be going in different directions. So there is something that we can do, and that is theoretical, that should be done, and that is that it opens immense possibilities. The world of OTT is like a library. You can make films for the future. It is not necessary that you at the moment the immediate box office of fate of the film is not necessarily the main goal, and that you can make films that question, that are not immediately popular. So if you start thinking of what a Satyajit Ray would have done and imagined, would he have then said that there is a audience, maybe the young are not interested in happy films that question. So there is a whole audience of people between 40 and 60 that's there, and can you make a film for all of them, and that films can be stratified into various kinds of films? Because I don't know if I have all the answers, but I make a certain kind of film, some friend of mine makes another kind of film, and there are films and there are entertainment products, and can we demarcate them, right? So there is this world of Marvel. So the theatrical audience seems to be going towards bigger films. Why OTT is kind of necessary and whatever, because for a theatrical release, there are many encumbrances. We are also, I've always wondered why cinema is not considered a social act. I mean, you take people into a theatre, even the worst film entertains them for 2 hours. It's a public place. So why is cinema considered? But from the government point of view, it is always considered like a sinful act. You are taxed like alcohol, or it's like a bad habit or something which people want to get rid of. More and more, of course, film people are considered bad habits, and that's another question. But we will not go into what has been in discussion here on the inaugural day. We will not talk about it too much because our films, we should make films that question, and we should be allowed to make films that question. But so the theatrical audience is a problem now because the price of real estate, the price of electricity, the price of putting a film in a theatre, that is, I don't need to elaborate this further because there are people who, it's kind of impossible. So we tend to, and we should make films as if which are future proof. I don't think we should say that if you make films, I don't think we should say that, well, I'm making it for this or I'm making it for the phone and most people are going to see it on a computer. I think you should make films the way you should make films, which is actually the art of the director which is getting under threat, I think. Because films more and more, and the OTT more and more considers cinema to be content. I hear this word content a lot. We are content makers. I don't know what that means. Shaji, are you a content maker? So, the art of the director. When I see the credit titles, I don't know who the cinematographer is. I don't know who the sound recorder is. Certainly don't know who the art director is. Who is he, a Badai? That's how he's seen. The songs are heard, but you don't know who the lyricist is. So what is the art of the director? The art of the director is that you are like a orchestra conductor who takes various talents, right, and uses them. So what is writing? My partner and my editor and my teacher at one point, and a pretty famous person, Shaji's colleague in the institute, Renu Saruja, used to say that editing is the rewrite, it's the final rewrite, right? So all the people who work with us are actually writers. You put one piece of music on a film, it means one thing. You put another piece, it will mean another thing. Try it sometime. You shoot a film in a certain way. The cinematography is moody, dark, some scene, something unseen. Then the film starts meaning something else. So and if it is brightly lit and in a flat and whatever, it means something else. Right? So when Ghalib says, for instance, that कहते हैं कि Ghalib का है अंदाज़े बयां और, he's not saying Ghalib का content कुछ और है. He's saying the way of seeing is different. So in a sense, cinema is a way of seeing. And if we don't understand that, and if we don't, in a sense, the OTT does not, or our times do not, see that as necessary and encourage that, then there is a whole lot of young people who will be kind of lost, because for it is, it's not that you hire 2 writers, which is what, or 4 writers, and then hire one director to come and execute it. If you see, for instance, I hope OTT does not go into this realm of easy things. It doesn't only cater. it kind of also encourages things like challenge. I know Tarkovsky would be impossible in OTT, but you know, and what would they say about Godard? But you know, I mean, but it is important to remember that if not for Godard, half of popular cinema wouldn't exist. You wouldn't know how to cut, right? If not for Battleship Potemkin, you know, where would editing be? So I mean, the art that I hope they encourage experimentation. I hope they encourage the brave, because otherwise, you know, it will all, you know, disappear into one easy thing. It more and more you see that, is that why most OTT content veers towards thrillers, towards suspense, towards there seems to be a carpet of tenseness on which to base everything. You know, if supposing you were to make a, I mean, it is said that if they don't watch the first episode, it's gone. Right? So, and I think sometimes they're right. So, I mean, if you lay the blame totally on the studio, the producer, the platform, whatever, then I think, you know, you're missing the point. Because we must, in order for OTT to become the medium that it is meant to be or can be, then I think the audience must participate. Until there, I mean, we all come from an audience, we are part of that, and we as filmmakers come out, and therefore, why was, say, somebody like Ray, as opposed to many filmmakers in India who were independent in the head, why was he able to do what he did? Because he had an audience in Bengal which was loyal, which saw his films. He was not just a filmmaker who was popular in Cannes. He was a filmmaker. So I mean, the OTT demands, you know, a loyal audience. And if there is a loyal audience, then, you know, the mass film, see, there's an Australian saying that says shit floats, no? So everything bad will always be more popular than anything good. Please believe that, you know. Nothing good can ever stop anything bad from existing. In 40 years, that's what I've learned. The hope is that we can be also part of it, that we can survive, that we can be around, that we can sort of reach somewhere and make a film which then, you know, influences some other young person who then makes another film, and maybe that film influences a larger audience. We are part of a relay race, right? We are not alone. What is original is a point of view. Nothing else is original, right? I mean, everything has been said before, or, you know, in terms of stories and whatever. What is original is my way of looking at it. That's why they say that, and that's what OTT, I hope, encourages. Because, you know, if you see a Shaji Karan film, you see a Satyajit Ray film, you see a Mrinalda film, you see, you know, Bengal, you know, for me has been many people, you know. I have wandered all over Bengal with Balu Sarkar. And the main person in my life is Balu Sarkar, right? The person who opened my head to many possibilities, right? So, I mean, if all sorts of filmmaking is allowed and all sorts of filmmaking is seen, then it's quite interesting. As far as I'm concerned, I hope OTT tends to allow that, OTT tends to, you know, encourage that, encourage another way of seeing. That's what I think. I mean, otherwise, a younger Satyajit Ray walking around these OTT platforms, maybe asked his biodata, maybe asked what is to write a kind of box office analysis of his films. So, I mean, I hope there are people who are encouraging of another kind of filmmaking. I hope that, and there is, for instance, good work done in the OTT platform, right? Not so much in terms of cinema or films, as much as long series. And what is interesting also about today is that you can do almost anything, no? I made in the past 2 years, I have not worked as much as I have worked in the past 3-4 years, right? So I made in that period, I made a long series. I made a short film, which is part of an anthology which Hansal Mehta and Anubhav Sinha and Ketan Mehta and me are making, which is roughly to do with COVID. And pretty, otherwise, we were giving no directive or a way of making. I've done a film called Appa, which is called Room, which means rumors, which with Nawazuddin Siddiqui and Bhumi Pednekar. So it's not as if it's the possibilities of OTT are immense. It is also incumbent on filmmakers not to be greedy. That's another lesson you can learn from Ray. You have to understand what you can do, the limits of what you can do, and then do it correctly, and not jump around doing everything. It's a very, very important lesson that besides the filmmaking, besides the precision of his frames, besides the fact that his dialogue suggested something in the future, it suggested talk about the past, he didn't need to cut to a flashback in order to do that. Besides the fact that where the music came and the music did something else than what the story of the narrative apparently was doing. Besides his whole control on the craft, you can also learn this. So it's a kind of imperative in the era of OTT for people to calm down a bit. There is too much work happening, I think. There's too much. If you go to Mumbai, you will not find a Steadicam operator free. You won't. You won't find a Steadicam operator. You won't find it's wonderful also that all sorts of actors have got work. Today, Manoj Bajpayee is as famous perhaps as Shah Rukh Khan. Perhaps. Right? I'm not knocking anybody, but I'm just saying there are people like Pankaj Tripathi and Nawaz and all sorts of actors who have no time. KK Menon is being rediscovered. Taapsee Pannu can hold a film on her own. There's all sorts of things happening, which is quite wonderful, Shefali Shah as an actor has been rediscovered, right? Otherwise, she was consigned to, Indira Tiwari standing up, please stand up, she was in Serious Men. So somebody like her, she played Nawaz's wife, so people like her, would maybe be consigned to a certain kind of part. Right, so there are stories that are being discovered. What is also wonderful is that, in the OTT sometimes, let me go back a bit, that every era, there is a window when good things happen, and then window gets shut. So the OTT came. There was a window that opened. People didn't know what to do. The platform, people didn't know what to do. And suddenly, Scorsese made a film. Cuarón made a film. Baumbach made a film. Oliver Assayas made a film. And I'm sure if Ray had been around, he would have made a film. I'm sure Ray would have been given money and that phase to make the film that he wanted to and couldn't because of budget reasons. I'm sure about that. But then what happens? The window starts getting closed. So now, since everybody should not be, now again people are saying this works and that doesn't work. How do you know what works? Because till now what has worked is not the expected thing. What has worked is, let's say on the OTT, and if you stop, I tend to like the OTT which I call long form cinema, which has a certain cinematic element to it. I am a filmmaker. I hope to be given the opportunities to do something like that. So there is Patal Lok, which did well. I'm talking about the Hindi content now, and I'm talking about something like even Panchayat, which was supposedly not supposed to do well. It was not a thriller, it was not this, it was not that, and then it did reasonably well. There's something like called Tabbar, which told a difficult story, which did well. Scam, of course, is legendary. So so lots of stories tend to get made, and I hope, we are not again going back to formula, because we must know that formulas don't work. What the audience is also saying, that stars don't work. You can cast anybody who works for the person. What is demanded today in the OTT platforms is a skill set. So that person must work for that part. But otherwise, I think stars are more a handicap than in the OTT way, because it demands a certain skill. So that is kind of, in a sense, I hope that most of such programs work. If you see in the West, could Better Call Saul, which I think is a great series, and I think is one example of let's say all sorts of writing combining. That example of great blueprint, which is a script, the director, the actors, the cinematography makes you smell the place, the sound design, all that. I think it's kind of future proof. You could show Better Call Saul in a theater, in a large theater, and it would work. Similarly, you could show Irishman. So similarly, you could show so many of the films that people have made that would work. And I think it's very interesting that the OTT demands of you. Of course, what I get, that's a theoretical proposition. What I get personally challenged by is my own lack of ability. But then that's another story. Today if you see that the whole thing is open to you, and I haven't made the great film that I could. And I think the filmmakers must take responsibility. Again, I'm repeating that any era, any time, it's very easy to, of course there are problems. Of course, zamana bahut kharab hai, and it always is for an independent filmmaker. Where is zamana being Goda Shaji, always it's tough, right? You've never had an easy time, This time is more easy in terms of making money. This is a very easy time. It's good. No actor is anybody with any skill set has work. So, but similarly, you can get lost. I would urge you all to read a letter that Martin Scorsese wrote to his daughter. It's on the net. So where he talks of the rigor that comes from being rejected, from taking time, from learning the skills. I think people jump up too early. You write 2 dialogues and you write half a scene well, you're a writer. Right? So I think people are too much in a hurry. So it's apparently a very good time, but I think a very dicey time for for people in a hurry, and a lot of talents might get lost in the way. But a lot of people who can use this opportunity correctly, like if you see this film called Kala, have you seen it?
Yeah.
It's a new film on Netflix. Now it's not shot to watching on a phone. You can like it or dislike it, but it places cinematography above everything else. She's taking the visual way. She's telling a story in a very, very visual way. So that ability that is inherent in a lot of people can also find expression if they don't get. You must have the basic ability of a filmmaker in any time, and especially in this time, is the ability to say no. You must be able to say no. You must find yourself. I keep telling Mayuk this. He's quite a genius, this young kid who works with me. He's from Xavier's. He's your boy, get up. Right? He's your boy. He's writing now for independently and all that. He worked with me from the beginning. Right? But he's got so much work, he'll get lost. I keep telling him he should be the next Ritu Parno Ghosh, He should make a film, he should just sit and contemplate, live in Bengal, travel for 1 year, not do anything and make a film. Because then, that is what OTT will allow you. There are other possibilities with OTT. Why don't filmmakers take the podcast route? And why don't more than filmmakers, set of producers take the podcast route? You have in the digital world, you have a bunch of people who are pretty self-sufficient, doing the work that they want to.
Jordan Peterson.
Let's say somebody like Jordan Peterson, whom I don't like, but he's still very popular. But there are many people, right, who whatever it's worth, don't operate with somebody else in the way, and that they have a direct contact with the audience, with their audience. So can this era of OTT open a time? I think in Bengal, can I say something?
Yes.
Right. I think in Bengal, the government must step in. Pathe Panchani was possible because Mr. Pradhan Roy stepped in. And after that, they did not need anybody. Except in the end, NFDC stepped in because he was, and as they should, because, I'm sure they got their money back as well. But, as they should. But, I think Korea sort of shows the way a bit. That a government-private partnership, in a sense, where to some extent, the Goa film market also fulfilled that purpose. That young people need advice from the right sources. They need reconfirmation. They need to be pushed up. They need to be introduced to a wider world. So until that's the function of the government, not to make profit or charge us with taxes. I think all the taxes earned by any government on films should be given back to cinema. So set up a fund, and that's what's done in many countries. You help a young person, and maybe you can say that after the third film, no one will get it. It is only available to people in their first 2-3 films, right? If I haven't till now have the ability to get a film made and released, then I should walk out and let the young walk in. No, there's a time for people to retire. In India, people don't retire. Only Sunil Gavaskar had the ability to retire. But mostly people stick around. and they kind of feed off the young and they take off all the opportunities of the young. So I mean, I think it's all spheres, right? So I think the government should set up a fund where young people, where Bengal can find its glory again, no? And more and more, and that's another thing that's happening because of OTT. Finally, whether you think RRR is a bad film, I don't know, or you think Pushpa is a bad film. But today, a young person in Mumbai or in Lucknow or in Jamshedpur, Jagdalpur, Jabalpur knows about a Telugu film. That that there's a film being made in Kerala, which never happened. Filmmakers knew Wonka, right? They didn't know the state next door. Right, so you talk to a young person, they were talking to you about Korean cinema and Finland and Aki Karusmaki, but they didn't know a Kerala filmmaker. They didn't know who was making films in Bengal, somebody in Bombay. So that arrogance is over. Thank God for that. And anybody can make a film from anywhere, in any way. And if the government steps in and gives in an autonomous way. When the government steps in, it's kind of dangerous. So it has to be autonomous. When I started out, I'll tell you, there was an organization called NFDC. NFDC, Vasu Bhattacharya, Mrinal Sen, Shyam Benegal, Shashi Kapoor, Arvindan, Gautam Ghosh were part of the board. Rishikesh Mukherjee was the head of the board, chairman. He didn't listen to anybody. My first film was passed in 15 days. I didn't know anybody. There was no networking, nothing. Arvindan said, apparently I heard later that he liked the script and said, this film you must pass, the other agreed. Right, so I think an organization like that of filmmakers from Bengal and outside should help and partner with an OTT platform or something in order to aid and reinvigorate Bengali cinema and cinema anywhere, and I think you will find an audience everywhere today. That's the power of the net. That's the power of the web. That a young guy sitting not merely in Calcutta but in somewhere else in Asansol, can make a film without coming to Calcutta, learn everything on the web and the net, and make a film which wins Cannes, theoretically. I'm not saying it will tough, but I'm saying it is theoretically today possible to get skill sets and to teach people anywhere. I mean, Shaji can teach cinematography to every young student in Bengal who wants to learn. I'm sitting from Kochi,
Film Institute.
No, I mean he can. So I mean the idea of the Film Institute of people being able to go there, because not necessarily that a person who gets, sorry, I mean I owe a lot to the Film and Television Institute of India. My brother was there and I was there, and then a lot of, but so that's what I'm saying, that there is a much wider, who knows talent is sitting where? We don't know. That's the magic of it. Anybody can get up from anywhere and something can happen. And that is possible in the era of OTT and the net, I think. And that's how I think cinema can be reinvigorated. When young people get an opportunity to express themselves and not be dictated to. There are formulas. There are silly script writing. If there's any young person, please don't attend script writing classes. Godfather cannot have been made with those script writing classes. Everything is supposed to be done this in this way and this way. I mean, there is only one thing and one rule in cinema. Every story should be as short as possible. All words being important. I'm not saying it should be this short or that short or that short. It's not even an original statement. Mame says this, right? And I agree with him. So today OTT offers you that opportunity to make a film that should be 5 minutes long. or there is a film that should be 6 hours now, or something in between. It's the material itself that dictates what the film should be, and that is also the magic of OTT. An episode doesn't have to be 30, it doesn't have to be 40, it can be anything. You know, with the right people. For example, what Sony Live is doing in, say, let's say in Bombay, you know, what they take Indian stories. I'm not saying nothing more can be done, but I'm saying it's interesting, right? I mean, when the right people sort of take right decisions, some young people get an opportunity, you know. And today when Anubhav Sinha is sort of alive, or let's say producing the kind of films that we are making, it's possible only because of a alliance with a platform. Whatever people will say, sitting here in this film festival, European cinema is not possible if TV deals are not possible. Let us be clear. You can theoretically talk about anything, but if the back end is not handled by a TV deal, then it's not, a producer can't make it. It's not viable. You know, so similarly, if today, what has OTT replaced? It has replaced the television in one way. It's a more independent, more freedom, whatever. It is incumbent on the audiences to make the platform self-reliant and not advertising dependent. But if everybody wants to see everything for free, I see kids want to see a film for free and then spend 1,000 rupees a day in Starbucks coffee, then God bless us. Then that's your problem. Then don't bullshit about cinema. Because it is the audiences. In order for cinema to survive in the age of OTT, the audiences must have genius. If Bengali audiences have genius, Bengali cinema will rise. It is the audience. और क्या बोलूं बस